Chapter 6, Episode 14 Her Wish and Falma's Bet. Palle and Blanche of the Medici family and their servants Catherine and Lot were shaken in the carriage. A dark hanging sky can be seen outside the carriage window. Lot was lying on the seat of the carriage, accompanied by her mother Catherine. Meanwhile, Lot's consciousness has become clear. She emits a faint hoarse moan and raises her eyelids, but she does not seem to have the strength to stand up. Have you woken up? Thanks to Pal Sama and Eleanor Sama. Mother. This is. Catherine, who was about to give up on Lot's recovery, cried with joy and hugged her daughter. Pal and Blanche sat across from them, monitoring their interactions. Lot, I'm glad you were saved. Blanche Sama. Blanche jumps at Lot, rejoicing in her recovery. Pal, who succeeded in the forbidden technique with Ellen and Lot was raised from the brink of death in exchange for half of his life, showed a relieved expression when Lot regained consciousness. Lot is skeptical of the interaction between the two and receives a complimentary explanation from Catherine. She really seemed to have no memory of those few days. Possessed by an evil spirit, he is said to have hovered between life and death. Pal worries about Lot's condition, which has become slightly smaller due to slight dehydration, and the area around her eyes has become thicker. You can sleep peacefully, let me examine you a little. Pal touched Lot's arms and legs with a stick to check deep and superficial reflexes. Using a method that combines modern medicine and divine arts, you can determine to some degree whether your reflexes are normal. It also checks blood pressure, pulse, temperature, etc. Then, when he took out the glass, he used divine arts to create generated water, mixed it with a mysterious drug substance that corrected Lot's physical condition, and gave it to him with divine arts. You have a slight fever, but that doesn't seem to be a problem right now. It's a very effective medicine, take it. So, Charlotte, how far can you remember? I think I was at the pharmacy. Then a strange customer came in. Increase. Please thank Eleanor. I hope we can meet again. I can meet you. Big brother, when you go up, don't say anything strange. Blanche argues against Pal that it's not luck. He seems a little nervous thinking about Ellen, who stayed in the pharmacy in the imperial capital where evil spirits are bubbling. And Beatrice, who lives in the villa to protect the de Medici's family instead of the head of the family, Bruno. Pal Sama. How is Eleanor Sama doing now? Lot, shut up. Lot's mother scolded Lot for asking Pal an open-ended question. Where are we going? The imperial capital has been occupied by evil spirits and the citizens are evacuating to Rambu City. After I send you to the evacuation site, I will return to the imperial capital. Pal Sama. It's dangerous, the imperial capital is already. Shut up, Catherine. However, if something were to happen to you, the next head of the family, the de Medici's family, Beatrice Sama, would do the same. However, both mother and father remained. If they'd just wrapped their tails and ran away, such a house would only eventually perish. The formation and spread of evil spirits is similar to that of plagues. Adult evil spirits are even more so. Evil spirits. In this case, if we do not stop the disaster in the imperial city and keep it at the epidemic stage of an endemic local epidemic, the world will soon be engulfed by evil spirits. If this is the case, no one will be able to do it alive. Mr. Pal. What do you do without fighting until your divine power is exhausted? This is the rule of those chosen by the guardian deities. Pal declared that he was obedient to Beatrice's instructions, and having ensured the safety of his servants, he seemed to have no intention of evacuating obediently. Brother, me too. You are a hindrance, Blanche. You have not prepared for the coming day. You and the people in your mansion evacuate to Rambu City. Protect the people around you and the citizens, and protect the barrier of Rambu City Guardian Temple. If that still works, I should be able to do something to exorcise the little demons. Brother. Let's die. I'm in trouble. I inherited this part of you from your father and mother. Catherine included embarrassment in her words, but did not deny it. The wagon train of the de Medici family, carrying them with different thoughts, is going full speed towards Rambu City. Falma unfastened the corset and belt from Ellen's limp clothes, spread a clean plastic sheet on the floor and covered it with a sheet. Lay her on her side, put gauze on her back with the wound, and cover it with a blanket to keep her warm. It was cold in the pharmacy, so I lit the fireplace to warm the room. Heart rate increased, blood pressure decreased. Is the bleeding 1 liter to 1.3 liters? While using his diagnostic eye, Falma pondered in his mind what to do from now on. In hemorrhagic shock, administer initial fluid infusion to restore blood pressure. It is human nature to want to stop the bleeding first, but even if the bleeding continues, the first thing to do is an infusion. If the blood pressure drops completely due to bleeding, even those who are saved will not be saved. When the blood pressure stabilizes, maintenance fluids are given, or if the amount of bleeding is large, blood transfusions are given, and then hemostasis is achieved. He assesses the severity of hemorrhagic shock. Assuming Ellen weighs 50 kilograms, the circulating blood volume is 1/13 of her body weight, or 3.85 kilograms. The amount of bleeding is barely within 35% or may exceed that. While I grumbled and applied the index called hemorrhagic shock index, the severity was 3 out of 4, and the maximum bleeding volume was estimated to be 4. It is a difficult situation, but the only relief is that this is a well-stocked pharmacy with medications. Falma jumped into the pharmacy's dispensing room and retrieved the infusion set. Ringer's lactate, Ringer's acetate, and Ringer's bicarbonate were ready to use in case a boy with type 1 diabetes who was selling milk fell into ketoacidosis, and were prepared. Ellen's blood type was tested in advance for elements such as blood type and irregular antibodies, and blood is drawn once a week and whole blood is stored in the refrigerator. If you follow the instructions in the manual, Ellen's own blood should be stored in optimal condition. There are also frozen red blood cells and plasma components. Fill the pot at the Divine Arts Pharmacy with hot water. Fill it with water to an appropriate temperature, and once the dropper bottle of Ringer's acetate is heated to about 39 degrees Celsius, the treatment begins. I have no choice but to do it. If there was even one more person here to lend a hand, the situation would have changed dramatically. I'm worried about making it on my own. However, all the preparations will come back at that time. Calm down. I'm not in the same condition as before. Previously, from a pharmacist's point of view, Falma drew the line that he should not interfere with the medical profession and retired from clinical practice. However, in this world, there is support for eye examinations, and there is no substitute, and I have experienced many cases as a clinical pharmacist, and I have witnessed Claude's autopsy and surgery in no small way. Experience accumulates little by little. There is no choice but to do so while comparing the updated knowledge with your skills. Face reality. First, palpate the arteries. The common carotid artery is palpable, but the radial artery of the wrist is not. Falma rips Ellen's skirt. Can't hold back to save life. Palpate the femoral artery in the groin. At this point, the blood pressure is empirically 70 to 80 millimeters of mercury. To secure peripheral venous access, tie off the arm and look at the arm and the back of the hand, dorsum of the hand. Peripheral veins are generally collapsed due to a drop in blood pressure, and the volume of circulating blood is decreased, making it difficult to see blood vessels. Nevertheless, at least 2 peripheral intravenous lines must be established with indwelling needles with an inner diameter of about 1 millimeter, equivalent to 18 gauge. Once the needle failed, it was somehow inserted into the cephalic vein, and a film was attached to the insertion site of the indwelling venous needle to fix it, and this was used as the first route. The other was punctured into the femoral vein, which is a large intravenous line, and preparations were made for rapid bolus administration into the intravenous line. Please answer me. Administration of an intravenous Ringer's acetate solution is initiated as an initial infusion. Bicarbonate, Ringer's bicarbonate I would like to use from the beginning to improve acidosis. But since it must be carbonated before use, it is discarded in an emergency when you are forced to respond yourself. The next best solution. Ringer's acetate solution is an isotonic electrolyte solution designed to replenish extracellular fluid when circulating blood volume is low and, more importantly, to restore blood pressure. I would like to add hydroxyethyl starch as a plasma substitute, but since the structural formula requires concentration, I am not considering this for now to avoid errors in synthesis. If blood pressure returns and circulatory dynamics stabilize, there is no need for blood transfusion, but if you estimate the amount of blood loss, it seems difficult to get by without blood transfusion. Is the dosage between 1L and 2L? Continuing a large infusion volume with rapid administration carries the risk of hypothermia and metabolic acidosis. A transfusion decision must be made and initiated. While praying that his blood pressure would recover, Falma realized something catastrophic as he began to prepare for a transfusion of Ellen's own blood. Wait, why is there a divine art formation? The refrigerator and freezer in the apothecary room where his own blood was stored, and the magic circle of water, a tribute magic responsible for its cooling, had collapsed. Was it destroyed by the battle with the evil spirits in the pharmacy, or was it already broken? I cannot say. However, the own blood of all the pharmacy employees except Falma was stored in the cold storage. Since when has it been at room temperature? It may have reached normal temperature within a few hours. When I thought about it, I looked at the transfusion bottle, but the red blood cells were hemolyzed and some of them had clotted, so it looked unusable. This can't be a blood transfusion. It might be possible to return to Imperial Pharmaceutical School and bring someone who could perform a blood transfusion, but given the round trip, the survival rate is hopelessly low. On the other hand, it would be foolish to bring the bleeding girl out here. Tell me, Ellen, how can I help you? Clasp her hand. As I stared at her face with a prayerful feeling while going through all the coping strategies in my head, I heard an auditory hallucination. Falma-kun, you look hurt. Ellen, I'm about to lose you right now. It looks like he's struggling because he's drowning and can't breathe. Exactly, but that sentence sounds familiar. At the time, Emmerich Bauer and his family were working to improve genome editing technology as a precursor to a cure for the deadly familial insomnia that afflicted them. Falma was so tired that he fell asleep in the lab and slumbered until morning, when Ellen whispered to herself. I remembered the words I heard at times in my slumber. You have the power of a medicine god, and you don't care about yourself and continue to help someone wholeheartedly. It is precisely because the power you possess is so great that what you are trying to give is so great that you suffer. I try to help everyone who sees it. I'm not such a good person, I'm just afraid. I'm scared of losing someone important to me or my family to a disease that I can save. I thought it would work. I wish one day I could help you the way you always do. Ellen, I needed you. You always supported me and helped me. Falma was frustrated. Even if there is the power of the medicine god, what is it? Right now, I don't have the power to save Ellen. If this situation that decided her fate was the Gravekeeper's plan to avenge or offend Falma, then I would not be able to save her no matter what I did. Neither medicine nor divine arts can heal you now. Human blood can only be supplied by humans. Could the tomb guard have skillfully brought about this situation? And I wonder if Falma intends to rob everyone he has a connection with in this world. While brooding helplessly, Falma gathered his energy and cast a spell. I had no medicine, but I realized there would probably be some kind of divine art I could use. Original salvation. He enveloped it with the unique mystery of the medicine god stick that only he could use. The light of divine art dropped Yakushinmin on Ellen's body and was sucked into her body. Even if all the phenomena of this world were in the hands of the Gravekeeper, this divine art could buy him some time, as he did with the Black Death. After he finished the spell, Falma suddenly lowered his gaze to his hand. Not yet. There were still things we could use. This time, instead of a spell, there was something left that could be used physically. If it's my blood type, I can do it, although my blood type is different. Homogeneous transfusion is the standard, but heterotypic transfusion is also possible. Fortunately, Falma's blood type corresponds to the O group on Earth and Aren's blood corresponds to the A group. Due to the lack of confidence in Falma's own blood, which has many cheat abilities and is not even real, he had not thought of donating his own blood but concluded that he was a good match. Because Falma's type O red blood cells do not contain blood group antigens, they can be donated to patients with all blood types. However, type O plasma also contains agglutinin, which can cause side effects when large amounts of blood are transfused. However, the agglutinin was diluted with Ellen's blood, so it was not a big problem unless it was given in large doses. I would like to separate just the red blood cells for a safer transfusion, but I don't think I have time to separate them. My blood isn't the best, but I'm not unfit either. There was some hesitation, but an emergency evacuation is required. For them, it's an emergency now. Falma changed his mind about transfusing his own blood to Ellen and continued with the procedure while collecting his own blood. However, things like blood that are not drugs cannot be tested to determine whether or not they are suitable for her body. It was not possible to determine the presence or absence of side effects until a blood transfusion was performed. Even if I left it to heaven, should I do a cross-match? Nevertheless, I would like to use the time during the large dose of Ringer's acetate to confirm whether there will be an immune reaction between Falma's and Ellen's blood. Falma had done detailed testing on his own blood, but the testing he could do was limited. In this case, it is best to have the blood react directly with each other. If you skip even this test and put it into their body once, you may not be able to control the side effects of the transfusion in their body. Therefore, a cross-match test was performed to see if antigen-antibody reactions would occur between the blood of the blood donor and the blood of the recipient. After centrifugation, the test results, estimating the approximate hematocrit value, indicated that blood transfusion was possible. Falma connected the tube to the inlet of the blood bottle taken from him and removed the white blood cells by chewing the non-woven filter to remove the white blood cells. Nevertheless, white blood cells remain, so they should be removed by irradiation as in the original procedure, but since there is no equipment, I will omit it. The Ringer's acetate pathway was filled with saline once and the blood transfusion was started. Go. The only thing I can give you now is my blood. Falma was still a minor, and he was not old enough to donate blood at all. Regardless of his age and judging by his weight, he collected 700 milliliters of blood when he should have donated only 400 milliliters, but Ellen would not be alive if he did not stop the bleeding while he used it all up. We have to hurry now to stop the bleeding. Falma began searching for the blood vessel responsible for the bleeding. You can use your eye exam to figure out where the bleeding is. Falma found the damaged part without much effort. However, it is not possible to diagnose which blood vessel the bleeding site belongs to. I found it. Falma takes the situation seriously, puts his hand on Aren's back and boldly thrusts his hand into the wound. Since he was completely unconscious and could not handle the anesthesia himself, he was treated without anesthesia. And since Falma's hands can only penetrate the human body with his bare hands, he makes the most of this feature. Whenever I see a transparent phenomenon, it feels like a dream, and I am reminded that I am a foreign body to this world. To stop the bleeding, you have to find the upstream artery connected to the vein responsible, or the portal vein. There is no way I can remember the blood vessel distribution in the corresponding control area. Falma's fingertips cannot be pinched because they slide through all the blood vessels of cubits with bare hands. To touch the blood vessels, Falma's fingertips had to be bitten. He creates a thin metal membrane, titanium in this case, through which he clamps the blood vessel like a clamp. After confirming the blood flow, the substance is erased and returned to its original state. First, the portal vein, which controls most of the blood flow, was cut, but the bleeding did not stop. Next, carefully check from thick to thin blood vessels. 70% of the blood flowing into the liver is portal blood, which carries nutrients to the liver, and 30% is arterial blood, which carries oxygen. Merge in the liver, sinusoidal fluid flows through capillaries called blood vessels and connects with veins. The lack of response to portal vein blockage increased the difficulty of vascular exploration to control bleeding. I found this artery, An artery was found that reduced bleeding from the hepatic vein when it was pinched. It was convenient for Falma because the hepatic artery could be accessed from the aorta for treatment rather than the portal vein. It would be nice to just fix it as is with titanium, but since I can make materials but I can't do plastic surgery well, I can't cut it well, and there's a chance I'll leak blood. Let's definitely do arterial embolization here. I decided to do arterial embolization (TAE), which stops the bleeding by plugging the blood vessel from the inside instead of cutting it off with a clamp from the outside. Falma estimated the diameter of the blood vessel at the site to be embolized. Next, insert your fingertip into the aorta, the thickest blood vessel in the human body, 2 to 3 inches in diameter, while forming a ring with your thumb and index finger. While feeling Ellen's blood flow, I create an embolic substance by placing a piece of ice between my thumb and index finger and placing it on the base of the ice piece before it melts. I wanted to use spongy gelatin as the embolization material, but gelatin is not a simple substance, so Falma could not make it. As an alternative, N-butyl 2-cyanoacrylate (NBCA) is used. It is not recommended for intravascular use in Japan. Don't let this go, it will be hard if you let it go. When this embolic substance flies into a blood vessel, it blocks other blood vessels. It's especially deadly if it flies into the lungs. In Falma's case, even if he skipped it, he could track it with his diagnostic eye and remove it by extinguishing the substance, but he was very careful not to add unnecessary work. NBCA, used as an embolic substance, is used as an instant adhesive and, as the name implies, polymerizes instantly when it comes into contact with a small amount of moisture. Grains of embolic material that have finished polymerizing are trapped, and when the ice that forms the base is melted, the material travels along the inside of the blood vessel, passing from the aorta to the hepatic artery and finally to the thin blood previously marked vessel was embolized. The NBCA Falma created ended up being slightly larger than he had estimated, but the diameter didn't matter much. Good, I'll block it with this. After a short time, blood flow in the vein stopped and most of the bleeding seemed to have stopped. Blood pressure recovered to about 90 millimeters of mercury. There was no sign of hypothermia because he was kept warm, and although his oxygen saturation is unknown, his heart rate is stabilizing. Gauze is stuffed from the wound on his back, soaks up most of the accumulated blood, and the gauze is removed from the wound. We looked for organ damage other than the bleeding site in the liver, but there was no damage to the lungs, kidneys, gallbladder, bile ducts, or major nerves. Is that okay? The blood transfusion just ran out. When I looked inside, the reaction to the light was confined to the wound, and my whole body, which had turned red, began to turn purple. This probably meant that he had saved his life, but Falma did not give up. After cleaning the wound, suture the accessible part and apply gauze to check that no bile is leaking. I need to attach the drain. Drainage is performed to remove the blood and exudates that have accumulated in Ellen's body. After the laparotomy, a drain is placed through the abdomen, but this time there is a puncture wound on the back. I hesitated to put a new drain in the abdomen, but hesitated to make a new hole. Maybe I should use this stab wound. I don't think it is a normal operation. But the wound edge around the stab wound from the back is straight. Chopsametsu. I decided to use the stab wound as a hole for drainage because there was no necrosis or necrosis. If the drainage is placed on the back, the tube will collapse when the patient is lying on his back. Therefore, the tube with internal folds is used as an open drain to allow the fluid to drain even when the patient is collapsed. And the tip of the drain is covered with sterilized gauze. As I looked at her through my eyes, the light enveloping her entire body faded and she began to recover. Afterward, monitor the clotting system and correct acid-base balance while watching for transfusion side effects. Then, although it was a procedure without anesthesia, I was eventually given pentazine drops to relieve pain, and glucose was gradually added to the aorta to prevent hypoglycemia. With the end of the state of emergency, we are gradually able to take things calmly. Falma hugged her and hugged her. I never want to leave her side. Ellen, I want to see you. I want to hear your voice. It was only when I was about to lose my mind that I realized the greatness of your existence. It was a little too late. I'm sorry. I wanted to be her patron deity now, not a medical deity. How she saved me, what I got from her and what emotions she had in that short and extreme time, I still can't tell you. I love you, Ellen. I loved you. Falma's tearful monologue echoed in the pharmacy where the two were alone. There was no answer. But a familiar pattern appeared on Ellen's wrist. It looked like the faint crest of the medicine god on Falma's upper arm. I wonder if Falma's blood flows throughout Ellen's body and has some effect. Is it the manifestation of Yakushinman as proof that her blood was mixed? As I stood still with my endless doubts, I soon received a heartfelt answer as I weakly grasped Falma's hand. Came back. Falma again grasped her vital sign with both hands.